Hi, so here we are today now speaking about the second component of the three which I spoke about in the previous lecture, one being fitness, sport, strength and conditioning. So we obviously have heard of sport. A lot of people do sport to stay fit as well. So what is sport and is it different to fitness? Is it the same as strength and conditioning? These three things like we decided earlier and we discussed, we will find out what's the difference. So sport, as the definition is, okay, and as you can read on the PPT, you can see sport is defined as a game, a competition or activity needing physical effort, which means you have to move a bit, and skill. So there's some particular skill like a table tennis player, badminton, basketball, whatever. So it's requiring a skill that is played or done according to rules. This is very important. It's done according to certain set rules. Now that is done for enjoyment or as a job. So just to go through that again, sport is defined as a game, competition or activity needing physical effort and skill that is played or done according to rules for enjoyment or as a job. So sport can be played for fun, sport can be played as a professional. And that's why we hear, somebody is a professional sports person. What does that imply? It basically means that they earn their living through playing sport. So now in this, there's one sort of, part which I would slightly say we have to also look at, the definition with a bit more kind of detail. It says sport or activity needing physical effort. Now, physical effort in different sports is different. In an Olympic sport like shooting, the physical effort might not be very much of running around or moving or jumping, but there's still physical effort of being able to stand, being able to, especially in something which is done with pistols where they have to hold the shoulder and stabilize it for a long time. But it is still different to somebody who plays maybe rugby or basketball. So we have to understand that physical effort can be of varying degrees. It need not be the same for all sports. And this also brings us to a very interesting uh, sort of point that we need to remember. And please listen to this carefully if you are a strength and conditioning coach, because this is a mistake that a lot of young players make or young coaches make. Fitness in sport has to be specific to the sport. We will come to this later. Okay, but you can't just think that, okay, we are doing fitness and that fitness has to be the same for every sport. Some sports don't need as much physical effort, so you have to train accordingly. You don't have to make everybody into a top level athlete who can move, jump, who can lift weights, who can stretch everything. Some don't. And if you're going to do or make them do those exercises which cause them harm, which is injuries, you have actually failed. So this is important to understand, okay, that sport has to be firstly understood as what sport, and then we go into the program. So now if you look at the picture below itself, if you see there are different sports here, they can all be classified as sports persons. But then if you look at the first person here, doing American football, ice hockey, you have your tennis player, badminton, probably boxing. The gloves are a bit different, so with the boxing or MMA, soccer, that is football, what we call uh, basketball, a deep kick, a front kick in martial arts, more probably a taekwondo kick, and then there's rugby. So all these players are fit, but then if you see, just this is of course for representation, this image, but still they would all require different training programs for their particular sport, and this is something we have to understand. So now we'll be going into the next slide and trying to understand what are the different types of sports out there. Okay, what is it that different sports entail and what do they need? So let's get into that. So these are sort of the major differences in sport. Okay, if you check different sports, you'll find that there's indoor sports, outdoor, team sports, individual sports, equipment based, some require equipment, some don't, contact, there's physical contact like boxing, non-contact, close-end skill and open-end skill. Okay, so these are the different types of sports out there. Let's go a bit more into details of each now. Okay, now we are going to talk about the difference between indoor and outdoor sports. Okay, Now the first difference in this, if you see, there are some sports that are played inside and some sports that are played out in the open. Okay, so what are the sports that are played inside? Badminton, table tennis, netball, basketball, sports like football, rugby, tennis, cricket, these are played outside. Now in today's times, one of the things we have to keep in mind is that due to the amount of funding, due to how sport is changing, there are stadiums which are there for even outdoor sports which are, you can say, being played indoors because of obviously the top being covered with a special sort of system where they close off the top so that rain doesn't affect. And in some countries where winter is a problem, where there's a lot of snow, they can have the investment to create stadiums and bigger avenues which previously used to be outdoors to be now had in indoors. So we have to keep that in mind. But in general, indoor sports are played indoors, and majority outdoor sports, football, we would still think of something that it is played outdoors. Now coming to the second point, and this is probably a very important point to understand and which affects our strength and conditioning programs when we create. Where is it that they play, say, a sport like badminton? Is it played on the beach during World Championships, or is it played in a garden? Can it be played, and can it be played obviously at competitive level? And obviously the answer is no. And the reason is because you wouldn't want wind to be there, which would affect the shuttle's travel. The lights would make a difference if the sun is in certain positions. So of course there are various things that can affect. So indoor sports are played in a very controlled environment. There's a certain type of flooring that is used. The lights are placed in certain angles so that it's sort of, as fair as it can be for both players. Sometimes the wind that blows, and especially in a sport like badminton, you have these big stadiums which have ACs, and the way the AC blows, that the direction of the wind can also affect how the shuttle travels from one side of the court to the other. And all top players, they tend to take all these into account. They know what to do, how to take advantage of a certain side. So this is something for us important to understand as SNC coaches, as SNC specialists, so that we know what to add and what we can to improve these people's playing. So these are the controlled environment factors that exist in indoor sports. Now what is it in outdoor sports, that we kind of can see in an open environment? Then outdoor sport, like somebody who's playing rugby or football, the wind will affect, rain will affect, heat will affect. Interestingly, with wind, uh, if you see races which are in athletics, they are what's called wind assisted scores sometimes. So the wind does play a role, for many of them. Um Sometimes the wind can assist. If it's in the same direction, it can assist. Rain, in some sports you carry on, if it's raining, it's like football, they'll still play through the rain. Swimming, if it rains and if there's lightning, they will get the people out even in practice. So a lot of these factors make a massive difference on the outcome of that particular sport. We might think in our world of strength and conditioning that it's all about lifting, running, and this sort of being fit, and that's all. But there's a lot more factors that come in, and the more experienced the player, the better the coaches. They know how to use all these in their favors, or sometimes they know what negative can be there from these factors. So it's important for us also to understand this. Now, one more aspect of indoor sports is, of course, the teams are generally smaller than what would be on a big ground. So football, there'll be 11 players. In badminton, if it's doubles, there'll be 2. Tennis, there'll be 2. In general, the numbers are lower, sometimes 2, 7, 5, because of the smaller space that is possible to play in. And the smaller teams and smaller space become these two sort of also factors which are part of both indoor and outdoor. In indoor sports, sport like, let's say, table tennis would require much smaller space, so you can have a table somewhere placed and you can play. If you want to play cricket, and I'm talking about like proper cricket where you're going to do a run up, do a fast bowling action, of course you need a big space. Now why, and this is interesting, just going off context, but why cricket is so popular in India and why it has really captured everybody's imagination is because almost everybody can play cricket in India, and or has played. And how is that? It's simply because we have modified, and I'm sure everybody listening here who's from India, has at some stage played cricket, not the professional way with pads and the cap and the helmet and everything. I'm talking about just taking a ball and just next to your building you do what we used to call underarm bowling, where you do this action and you play. So we've all had some experience of a ball, a bat, about a shot, and that's why we have sort of modified that game and made it applicable. And almost every second person, whether it's a man or woman, at some stage would have thrown a ball. So it's interesting to note how sometimes even modification of a game can just influence us culturally so much and have such an impact on so many different games. So these become, coming back to the point, is these are the two different sort of types of definitions of indoor and outdoor. Now we move on to the next one, which is going to be again a differentiation between two sports. Now the next differentiation is some sports are team sports, some sports are individual sports. So sports which are like team sports, obviously cricket, football, a lot of people play, hockey, badminton, of course, yes, but in badminton is the doubles. When two players play, it becomes a team sport, though it's just two. Individual sports are which one? Boxing, it's one person against another. It's not three boxers against three other boxers. Weightlifting, it's one person lifting at a time. Okay, so at that moment in time, it's one person. Badminton, again as an example, singles, one person playing a match against another. Okay, sometimes you might have this question that that's sometimes called team championships in single sports, like badminton has this and various sports will have. We have to understand that in those, the team plays as a team in the scores, but they don't play at the same time. So a team championship doesn't mean all the badminton players get on court and are playing against the opposite and then get a result. It's just that the matches will be going on same way, one against one or two against two, but the scores will be taken at the end of it and then the better team wins. So we have to understand that the team championship is different to team sports. The next sort of difference, okay, and this is a major difference in team sports where there's a lot of players. So there could be somebody who's an exceptional batsman and somebody else who's maybe not as good, and a third person who's a better bowler. Okay, so there's a lot of this inter-player coordination that happens in these big sports, in this big, the team sports with a lot of people, and there's a large role of somebody who can be a manager, and that is the reason you see in football especially they have a team manager. Okay, and sometimes you have these coaches who work on the tactical aspects, like at a certain point in time you send in a certain player. Okay, in cricket, in the whole list of players, there'll be certain players sent at a certain time during the match to play. Why is that done? Because they want to use the strength of that player at that particular point in time, and that requires a lot of coordination, obviously, which is done by various experts who would know when to send somebody. They would probably use technology there to see the track record of certain players playing at a certain position. So they go by that, and there's a lot of calculations they have to do. There's a lot of work that has to be done there to know who to go. Now in an individual sport, okay, when someone's playing one-on-one, again I'll go back to an example of badminton. There it's all you. The play is all by themselves. Okay, if it's doubles, then yes, two can coordinate. But if it's a singles player in badminton who's here, you have to decide that you've made a mistake. Now what do you do next? What's the next approach that you're going to do? So your mental, physical and technical coordination is just who has to be doing this. So this is again very interesting to understand, these different sports, how they play, and the more you get into this, the more you will understand. It's extremely important for SNC specialists and anybody who's working in sport to understand that sports are different and then each sport has its own requirements. And something we have to understand with individual sports and doubles with team sports, and I'll give an example of badminton here. Very interesting that in doubles badminton, if you watch their movement patterns, the players will be generally very low. They would be sort of squatting down and taking shots. Okay, they're generally standing low because it's very fast, and the reason is because there's two players on each side. So the shuttle, when it goes to the other side, it comes back faster because there's already somebody under the shuttle to send it. If it's one person, they might have to travel from here to there and then send it back. So in doubles, it comes back very fast. So you see those rallies that they have are very, very fast. Tuck, 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 it goes on. So we have to understand that their physical requirements are different. They're staying down, they're squatting low, their speed, their reaction is very fast. The hand speed, they hit and hit. Then sometimes they just go on hitting smashes when there's a lift, and then one person will jump. And I would strongly suggest people to watch some doubles badminton and singles to see the physical differences. So as they jump in the air, hit a smash, again jump, it comes back, hit. Sometimes it just goes on 5-6 smashes. Then it can change. Then once this person does sort of a lift, then it starts from there. So it's interesting to note these differences, okay? And also how in badminton, again, when you watch, you'll see in doubles, before the person serves, they have these hand signals, within the teams, whatever they have agreed on. So generally you'll see, the person who's serving, and there'll be their teammate behind, they'll take one hand and keep it behind, and they'll make a signal, depends. Some of them will say 2, 1, there's anything, they have. So they do that so that the person behind knows what is the serve that they are going to do. Is it going to be a low serve close to the net, or is it going to be a high serve? So these are all these fine intricacies that are there in sport. And a lot of SNC coaches, sports science coaches, sometimes, or people don't get into these. They just assume that I'm here to make you run, I'm here to make you lift, I'm here to make you do some stretching, and that's all I am. If you can understand these things, you can actually contribute better. Okay, so these are the fine intricacies of these sports, and obviously individual becomes a bit more you yourself. Interesting, another point I can say is that in badminton, if it's a singles player, you will notice there'll be a coach or two coaches sitting behind. In tennis, a coach is not allowed. In fact, in tennis, from what I have heard from the coaches, they say even the coach screaming some direction to do this is not allowed. So again, two different sports, both are racket sports, but different sort of ways they are handled. So their tennis player would obviously have to take his own decisions, because he cannot ask the coach, what do I do now? What next? Whereas a badminton player's coach could be sitting behind and could be constantly giving ideas. So again, different requirements. We have to come in there and fit in there and improve their performance knowing all this. Okay. What's the next difference, okay, between team sports? Team responsibility. When a team wins or loses, obviously the whole team gets the credit or the criticism. Here in individual sports, it's you. You win, you did it. You lost, you lost. So team responsibility plays a role, and interestingly, we will know what happens with the Indian cricket team when they lose, and especially if they end up losing against a team like Pakistan, right? The fans sort of, really go after them, because they look at the whole team. And then of course, if somebody out of the team had played badly, then, people will say, or commentators will say, and again, the team selectors would also, make a note of that. But there is a team. There's 11 players who were responsible for winning or losing. And in individual sports, it's just you. So between these two, SNC specialist will find that when you work with individual sports, and especially they are very physical dominant, it becomes you can contribute a bit more, and then you can sort of predict or rather expect what will be the results, because you worked with one person and what is it that you can expect out of their movement. In a team sport, there's so many variables and so many factors, so it becomes difficult and different between the two to gauge results. Like, you could have made somebody very fit, but will they be able to use that in coordination with others in a football match, to get the best out of that team? So different requirements, and we have to really know what we can do and what we can sort of, include to improve that game. So important to know these points. And one thing to note with a lot of team sports, because the variables are so high, the weather can make a difference, the surface can make a difference, okay, the team selection can make a difference, okay. There are records sometimes, so many. In some sports you see a record because this is the first time somebody has scored so much on this particular ground. Sometimes the record will be that this is the first time that somebody has hit so many sixes, and various records. And some other sports, the records are very simple, like in swimming, there's a time, you're the fastest in the world, or you're the second fastest, or so on, or in your country. So records again can be, the more the variables, the more the records, or the sort of records isn't the achievements. The lesser the variables, if it's from point A to point B, the lesser the chances for creating records in different things. So it's just simple, it's your time that matters. So these are things for us to understand between sports, and we can definitely improve as SNC specialists in this. Now the next one, simple equipment based sports, non-equipment based sports. What are equipment? Equipment is any object that you carry to play that sport. Cricket, you need a bat and a ball. You just can't go and say I'm playing cricket without a bat and a ball. Archery, you need a bow and you need the arrow and then you shoot. Badminton, you need a racket, you need a shuttle. Tennis, shooting, so on and so forth. Now various sports. Which are the non-equipment based sports? Swimming, you need a swimming costume, you jump in. Wrestling, it's your body against the other person, you go in, and of course you wear shoes, but there's no object that you manipulate. Gymnastics, now in gymnastics, in some of the rhythmic gymnastics, it's a bit different because there would be an object which they will probably have, but majority of gymnastics is just the body which is controlling over the balance beam, or which is onto the court, and they are doing their different flips and their somersaults. So equipment in some sports, no equipment in other sports, or minimal equipment in other sports. Now what is that point about equipment that is necessary, and especially for us to understand? The mastery of the equipment is extremely important in equipment based sports. And what do I mean by this? If, let's say, again giving an example of tennis, of badminton, two players playing, serve, receive, go on, rally goes on. It is not these two players who really matter, who are the personalities. What matters is the racket, the way it connects with the shuttle and moves here, point A to B, and so on and so forth. And I always say that is the shuttle that wins the point. It is not the player. If we have to take the player out of a film and only had to keep the racket, it is the racket that plays. So we have to understand that this physical mastery is something that they practice, which players practice, and they want to make it as automatic as possible, and some of them are just better at it, and that's what makes a champion, right? So the equipment mastery which a player needs is done through practice, and it is finally all that matters. You could be the strongest guy in a gym, but if you don't know how to hold a bat and play that shot, or you don't know how to do a table tennis serve which has that nice spin to it, then all the strength is not transferring to your sport. And this is something we will be discussing, of course, about this in the periodization lecture. But we have to understand this about equipment sports and the ones which are about just the body. So the non-equipment based sports, they have physical mastery. Okay. Now what is physical mastery? If you see a wrestler, okay, and when they are having their wrestling match, they would be able to put their body in a position where they can take it to, and maybe in extreme position, arch their back and take the other person down. For this, physically, they have to be very, very aware of where they are in time and space at that particular moment. This becomes important for them because without this physical mastery and without having that sort of, reliance on themselves, there's nothing else that they can use to win. A cricket player is using the bat and ball. That is what is winning. The ball, when it goes out, it is 4 runs, and that is what sort of gives them higher scores. They hit the ball out, 6. The cricket player doesn't have to worry too much about how their body is feeling at that point in time. They of course work very hard, there's no doubt about it, but somebody who's into a non-equipment based sport, like the examples itself, swimming, wrestling, gymnastics, athletics, if you see, we're not talking about discus or shot put because there is an equipment, but even there's a lot of physical effort. And one of the points that you would notice with players who are into more physical sports versus the ones who are with equipment, physical sport, because of the higher requirement of when I say physical, I mean the non-equipment based sports, you will see that their bodies are generally much more physically developed than those who are in sports which require equipments. And the reasoning behind this is again very simple. The demands are more here physically. Whereas with equipment, you can get away with a spin or a shot. You know, a lot of times, and this is the next point, people get an advantage in equipment-based sports by using technology, which makes the whole equipment that you're using, let's say there's player A using a certain racket in tennis and there's player B, and the player A who's using the best racket which is out there, which has been tested for the strings, for the weight of the uh, racket and so many other factors, and if they have the best, that can give them that advantage over others who would just be playing and maybe not having the same support from the equipment. So this is something we have to understand, that these things matter, and in a wide range of team where sports science exists, this is something that plays a huge role when it comes to game results. It is not again just about saying that I did strength and conditioning, you're going to win. And I keep applying this to the sport because we need to understand where we fit in, and that's what we started with, right, in the earlier lectures. So yes, technology plays a massive role in equipment-based sports. In the physical dependency sports, like where there's no equipments, wrestling, it is still about that body awareness, grit, and really going through the whole point of just pushing people and your own body. So these become the main difference between equipment-based sports and non-equipment-based sports. The next difference between sports is some sports are contact, some are non-contact. Okay, so which are the contact-based sports? Contact are boxing, rugby. Rugby, there is contact, not all the time, but there is when there is. Wrestling, it's all about contact and overpowering the other person. Judo, mixed martial arts, again, if you look at it. Where there's no contact is badminton, swimming, tennis, track and field. Like you basically don't have to touch the other person at all. So this becomes the basic difference. In contact sports, there's physical proximity. You are closer to a person. So a boxer is much closer to a person than a football player whose difference will change. Somebody can come close, out, and even if there's contact, it is not deliberate. In fact, it is fouled, in football if somebody really comes close and tackles. But boxing, if you look at it, the whole idea is to hit. You want to hit the person, you want to be close enough to hit. You don't want to be so far that you can't hit. In non-contact sports, we look at tennis, for example, there's a difference. There's a net and you guys, the two people are quite far. Contact sports will have tackles. If you look at mixed martial arts, MMA, there will be people who would want to come in, take the person down. Locking is where certain joints are put into certain locks so that the person taps out. Grappling, where again two people grapple. Collisions in rugby, where two people one can be running and the other person tries to tackle and there's a collision. So there is connect, basically there's touch between two. Okay, and this does require a different mindset obviously for those who are in such sports. In non-contact sports, the chances of physical confrontations are lesser. Okay, there's a lot of strategy, there's a lot of skill. You think of how to beat the person with the equipment while keeping that person far away. There is no touch. Whereas those who are into sports which are like boxing or mixed martial arts, there's a different approach. You will notice that their presence in a room itself, or in a place, they are very aware of bodies because they are all the time in that frame of fighting. Not all the time, I would say, but they are trained to fight. So when they see a person this close, that close, there's an awareness of body, how far the person is, how far my reach is, how far can my hand reach, how can I contact, So this becomes a difference between contact versus non-contact. Contact sports person in general are much more aware of their physical presence in time and space, like where they are, who's standing behind them, who's in front. And this is something that is part which comes from practicing contact sports, which are especially fighting sports, wrestling, boxing, judo, kickboxing, taekwondo. You are always aware because you want to know, can I reach the person and hit them if the sport is on, or can I move out when they try to hit me? So that awareness is one aspect which is pretty interesting to note in these sports. The other thing in contact sports, of course, there's protective gear. There's you have your mouth guards. You can see there's mouth guards, helmets to minimize injuries, because you don't want people to get injured. So you have all these. Non-contact sports, winning through skill execution, speed, accuracy, agility. You want, players end up uh, doing everything without beating the other person. Let's put it that way, you know. And sometimes there's a joke. I remember one of the boxers telling me, one of the Olympic boxers saying that boxing is one of the sport where आप जब जीतते हो तब भी मारना है और जब आप हारते हो तब भी मार खाना है. मतलब, like both ways, you beat. जब जीतेंगे तब भी मार खाना है और जब हारेंगे तब भी मार खाना है. And that is sort of one of the interesting things which we should understand as well about these different sports. Now next slide, and next difference, close-ended skills versus open-ended skills, or sometimes what's also called closed chain movements, open chain movements. Okay, so closed chain movements are what? They are fixed movement patterns. Okay, like you do X movement and you keep repeating in the majority of the event. So let's take swimming. You dive, you get from here to there in 50 meters and you finish. Okay, track and field, you run. The movement pattern is, if you're a sprinter, there's a certain action. You won't run this way. Okay. Um, in open skill sports, open-ended sports, badminton, from one position, if you're at a certain position on the court, you can play various shots, probably millions. Just the angle can change. The shuttle going at this angle, this angle, this angle. Here, how far it goes. Okay, is it going to go all the way to the end of the court, middle, closer, near the net? So many variations can happen just from one point. If you have to just imagine, like, as if it's a game, from this point, how many shots? It can be like, I don't know how many actions can happen just from one. But in swimming, from that one position, you are going to, if you're doing freestyle, then it is just going to be elbow high position, go, whether it's, some people like to do sort of the windmill action where it's straight arm, whatever they do, the positions are, the movements are repetitive. And this has to be understood about these different sports. Some sports have these various shots that can be played. Cricket, a batsman has shots which are cross so many that they can play. Okay. Swimming, track and field, it's not really possible. So again, though skill is important, but it's repetitive and there's a sort of different mindset and a different approach to that skill. The movement patterns are fixed. Open-end sports, unlimited movement patterns. There's various things you can do just from one position. Okay. In close-end skills, there's a lot of dependency, or rather I would say a lot of usage of sports science and technology, a greater. And the reason being that sports science can tell you exactly maybe the X amount of strokes you take to reach from here to there. The dive angle in swimming, if it is at a certain angle, how you save, you cover more distance. So these make a lot of difference, and technology can be used a lot over here. In open-end sports, like we take an example of, again, a sport like badminton, and I keep using badminton because it's one of those sports which requires fitness, high levels of mental um, ability, and high levels of skill as well. It's really that sport which has it all, like everything to its extreme. So in badminton, there's a lot of dependency on skill. Your skill matters so much, how you play. And you can really, slow the game. You can increase the pace, the shots. You might not be the fittest badminton player, but you can beat a fitter one if you know how to play better, just using your wrist, your shoulders, using a lot of stop-start movements, reading the opposite person's game. So the dependency on skill becomes much higher. Technology can be used, of course, to read maybe the shots or to read the angles, but yes, compared to close-end skills sports, a bit lesser. What's the other difference? In sports which are close-ended, where repetitive movements happen, there's a greater chance of repetitive injury. And why is it so? Because in swimming, you know what is called swimmer's shoulder. People just use the shoulder repetitively for kilometers. There are people who do generally in a practice. In India, there'd be some who would be doing like 3 to 4 kilometers in the morning and then 3 to 4 kilometers in the evening. And of course, this is something we'll talk about in the overuse and the overloading problems in sport. But yeah, there are people I know who are made to do swimmers, young kids, 16-year-old and so, who are made to do 8 kilometers in the morning and 8 kilometers in the evening. And the coaches don't just listen, they say, no, that's it, this is my style. 8 kilometers of just swimming. You can imagine people sometimes can't walk and run 8 kilometers. So a kid swimming that in the morning and then in the evening. So what's the potential for injury, to that shoulder? So these are very interesting questions, when this load pattern becomes sometimes unnecessary, but this exists. Open-end skills, uh, when something is very wide, where there's various movement patterns, uh, acute injury chances, sort of the potential goes a bit higher. So when we look at something like, again, football, which is also an open-end skill, because the ball can go in various directions from one position, the chances there of having injuries because of different movements is higher of something which is acute. So somebody falling maybe after trying to take a header and then lands, or maybe somebody who's tackling and then there's an ACL injury, a badminton player after smash lands, twist their ankle. So various injury potentials are there here which are more acute, which can be sudden, but in the close-ended ones it's more repetitive. So now we know the different types of sports, okay, indoor, outdoor, team sports. You have the list out there, and hopefully this has helped. There are various other differentiations as well, some such as, some sports are more power dominant, some sports are more mind dominant. So if we compare two sports like maybe shot put, okay, where there's so much power that is generated, you spin and within just 2.5 seconds or 3, the shot put is out, literally a 7-kilo metal ball which you have to throw. And then you take a sport like shooting, which doesn't have as much sort of power generated. So these are two different sports, but their requirements are different, and it's extremely important for us to understand what requires what. You shouldn't be training a shooter like a shot putter, and you don't train the shot putter like a shooter. This is important so that we create programs like what I use the word, you give the medicine according to the patient. So if exercise is medicine and the player is a patient, you give it according to the patient. You don't give the medicine from a fixed recipe where you just decide this is it. You're a sports person, you have to do A, B, C. This is where a lot of people fail in designing good programs, and in program design we'll be talking more about this. So hope this has helped. Go through this. If you have any doubts, go back, try to understand the different types of sports, and there's even more sports and even more differentiations, and hopefully this should have helped you to get a better idea. Thank you.